Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah wa salatu wassalamu ala Rasulullah. We continue reading from Imam Al-Ghazali's Discipline on Disciplining the Soul, Kitab Riyadat al-Nafs, translated by T.J. Winter Abdul Hakim Murad. We are on page 34 of the introduction, the translator's introduction, and the very last thing that we have spoken about was Ithar, supererogatory acts where you put others before yourself, selfless action. So we continue. We have reached now a subtitle in the introduction. This is number 5. Acquire the character traits of God, which obviously is practically a translation of تخلق بأخلاق الله, one way or the other. And we will reach to this concept. The hadith itself is a forged tradition. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala alam. So these are the notes of the Abdul Hakim Murad. By Ghazali's time, the importance of acquiring noble traits of character was being treated in an increasingly systematic way. It was recognized that the process was supported by the presence of strong faith, and that faith in turn was supported by it. As the influence of Plato made itself felt, the Platonic notion of the philosophical life as an attempt to become as similar to God as is possible for mortal beings was increasingly in the air. Of course, one should not forget that the Greek gods were pretty much like the human beings. They were fashioned after the human being. So it's not that. It is the gods, the Greek gods, that imitated the human being in their behavior. Just look at how they competed amongst each other. They destroyed each other. They jealousy, love and war, and just think about it. And the statues that the ancient Greek civilization left behind reflect this fascination with the human being, really. So the human being is the model. So when we speak about anthropomorphic characteristics of the gods. Now we move to the hadith. This was backed by a hadith which enjoined تخلقوا بأخلاق الله. تخلق بأخلاق الله hadith موضوع. This is a forged tradition. It is very important to highlight this. It doesn't mean that you don't if and of course there is a reference to Maqsad al-Asna. So acquire the character traits of God, which seem to hint that ethics could be a path to reclaiming man's theomorphic rather than the other way around, the anthropomorphic. Of course, the anthropos versus theon. Both Greek for the first one, anthropos is the human being, and the second one is God. So godlike nature, and it was also this is rooted in the biblical narrative. We do have a hadith, the biblical narrative that God created Adam in His image. The Hebrew is Bitsalmo, Salim Bitsalmo, in His image, على صورته. While the hadith, when we Muslim scholars, when they address this hadith that Allah Subhanahu wa Taala created Adam على صورته, the pronoun, the suffix pronoun should be a reference to Adam rather than Allah Subhanahu wa Taala, which is typically the way Arabic is structured. The very last noun mentioned before Surah was Adam, not Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. And it was this which inspired one of Ghazali's most original works, The Highest Aim, the Maqsad al-Asna, in which he lists each of the 99 names of God established by tradition and explains how man can assume the nature associated with each. Now, is it with each that human being can assume? Maybe this should be reviewed, this statement. In a chapter entitled An Exposition Showing that Man's Perfection and Happiness Lie in Acquiring the Character Traits of God, he writes that man must strive to adopt and acquire what is possible for him of these attributes, and adorn himself with their beauties. For thus does man become lordly, Rabbani, that is close to the exalted Lord, and become a companion to the highest host of angels. As a modern commentator has pointed out, Ghazali adopts a precedent set by Qushayri and Bayhaqi of mediating on the moral implications of the names as the basis of a more methodical and ambitious spiritual programming of discarding the ugly and nurturing the beautiful traits of the soul. It is when man has achieved this that he, like the angels, is fit to receive the divine light. Every divine trait of character, he implies, is innate in man, is part of his primordial disposition, the fitra. خلق, the character trait, is therefore inseparable from khalq. In fact, if you khalq, creation, created nature. In fact, if you write khuluq and khalq in Arabic without the short vowels, they are identical. There's no difference at all. So the root is the same. And it is thus, I might just simply add that khaliq, worn out, it looks the same too without the short vowels. And it is thus that man must make use of the hidden correspondence which exists between him and his maker in order to return to him by his attributes. This perception was later taken up and made more explicit by Ibn Arabi of Marsiya, for whom it became a key principle of the path, of the spiritual path. Maybe if we are, since we are speaking about this, when Aisha radiallahu anha, al-Mu'minin, was asked about the Prophet ﷺ, about his character, She said كان خلقه القرآن. So his character was really كان خلقه القرآن, the implementation of the whole Quran, and refining the character really is very important. And one should think about the implication of not only the like how to achieve this, how to achieve this. Dwelling on the 99 beautiful names definitely could be a source, but also the looking into the Quran and looking into the most of the Quran is not about jurisprudence. Very little, really, of the Quran. Some scholars said that a couple of hundred verses about jurisprudence. The rest is about faith and morality, ethics. Number 6, Sufism and sexuality. One of the most telling divergences between Islam and Christianity lies in the attitude which each religion has nurtured towards sexuality. Christian and Muslim ascetics may have agreed on the value of hunger as a means of self-discipline, but on the rather more intractable matter of sex, they trod very different paths, inspired by the vision of a celibate Christ, preoccupied with the notion of original sin and the subsequent case of concupiscence transmitted to Adam's progeny, which was dwelt on in detail by Augustine, Tertullian, and other patristic writers. Christianity produced a remarkable catalogue of exploits against the demon of lust. Many believed that virginity was the foundation of the church, or even that virgins alone could reclaim the angelic state by which man becomes worthy of heaven. By the 6th century, most notably in Eastern Christianity, the Church had settled into a set of moral teachings which expected virginity from all men and women, with a higher vocation, tolerating marriage only for less gifted believers. For the body was the devil, or for the body was of the devil, and as Gregory of Nyssa pointed out, if the life which is promised to the just by the Lord after the resurrection is similar to that of angels, and release from marriage is a peculiar characteristic of the angelic nature. He, the Virgin, has already received some of the beauties of the promise. Before moving to the Islamic part here, how it is different from the Christianity, the sexual revolution took place in pretty much the what could be described as the pretty much Christian countries, and it is still unfolding. All these new sexualities reinterpreting the family, and the church The many Protestant churches already recognized uh, same-sex marriages, and the Catholic Church, the Catholic Church is this is Pope Francis is softening the position. It's not yet a full recognition, but there is a softening position vis-a-vis uh, gay couples and what have you. But as I said, until really until very late, really, there was no issue. There were two genders, male and female. I remember when I filled my application the first time for when I at Boston College. We just write it was either male or female, and now you have uh, literally more than 100 genders, and it is related to sexuality, which eventually also there's in this introduction it does talk about leaving the higher level is no sexuality, virginity, leaving the marriage for the less than perfect, let's say. But today, even that is not the case. People are having children out of the wedlock with no. I'm talking about these Western countries, primarily single parents. That's really an important issue. Islam preached a physical resurrection and also a physical paradise, with more spiritualized pleasures being reserved for the righteous and the saints. With a candor which continues to draw reproach from Christian polemicists, it called men and women to a paradise in which every pleasure which brought no harm upon others would necessarily be present. But that's also problematic today in Western circles because they could argue that that they are those who are engaging in sexual acts that fall out of that which is considered moral and natural. They would say we are bringing no harm and it is consensual and what have you. So a paradise in which every pleasure which brought no harm upon others would necessarily be present and even enhanced, as the Prophet had taught. And in heaven there is a host of the large-eyed Huris, Al-Hurilain. These are the females of paradise, who lift up their voices in a sound the like of which has never been heard by any creature, saying, "We are the eternal ones and shall never pass away. We are the joyful ones and shall never grieve. We are the contented ones and shall never be vexed. Blessed, therefore, is he who shall be ours and for whom we shall be." This hadith has a weak chain of narrators, and some scholars said that it's gharib. The literal meaning of gharib, literal, is strange, but uh, It might simply for like the Tirmidhi, it's a form of a weak hadith. Allah alam. The Quranic paradise, an exquisite, limitless garden of rivers, fruits, crystalline mansions, and for the elect, the beatific vision of God stood before the eyes of the early Muslims with a constancy that is now hard to imagine. It did much to confirm the Muslim assurance that the world was not fallen, so there's no original sin. Of course, Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam committed a sin. And one difference is that the story of the fall is is not uh, is not blamed on Eve like in the biblical narrative. Eve eats first. The Satan shows up in the form of a serpent, and Eve eats first, and she introduces the prohibited food to Adam alayhi salam. And when he is reprimanded by God, he says, "The woman that you gave me," like he threw Eve under the bus, of course, metaphorically. And it's the very first story in the Quran where Adam and Eve were warned against Satan's temptation. And this is in the second chapter of the Quran, verses 30 to 35 approximately. The Quran uses the dual suffix pronoun without the names. So both of them were warned, both of them were tempted, both of them ate, both of them. We don't know which one ate first. We don't know which one was expelled first. But we do know that the Quran shoulders more responsibility on Adam, which is total opposite direction compared to the biblical narrative. And in the biblical narrative had a great negative impact on the status of women because of this story. And I say that the very first story in the Quran liberates women from the burden of the fall, from being singled out. That the attractions of the earth reflected. So it did much to confirm the Muslim assurance that the world was not fallen, that the attraction of the earth reflected, however faintly, the archetypal beauty of paradise, and that to renounce them could be no more than a provisional strategy, not a necessary state, just as the age-old Muslim love of gardens in modern Arabic Junaina, little paradise, reveals the extent of the Muslim desire to create on earth, albeit distantly, a reminder of the perfection which is to come. So too does the traditional Islamic understanding of sexuality reflect the conviction that something of heaven can be enjoyed here below on earth, meaning the frequency with which lovemaking is pursued in a botanical setting in Persian and Turkish poetry can be seen as a charming testimony to this. Back to the notion of Junaina, little paradise. Junaina, the diminutive form of Jannah, Jannat. So Jannah, plural Jannat, Jannah, Junaina. In fact, the Quranic narrative, in more than one context, on earth, it's the same word, but We talk about gardens. We talk about uh, they are considered the Jannat, like in the story uh, of Saba, and one could see the topography in Yemen, Subhanallah, that support the idea of the Jannat on the right and left side. Further, further support for an active married life was available in the example and teaching of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Marriage is my way, he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Marriage is my way, my sunnah, a hadith announces, and whoever leaves my way is not of me. When he heard that, an ascetically minded companion, Abdullah bin Amr, who was in the habit of praying all night and fasting all day, the Prophet is said to have reproved him with the words, "Your eye has a right over you. Your guests have a right over you. Your wife has a right over you." The text of the Arabic is, "Ya Abdullah, alam أخبر أنك تصوم النهار وتقوم الليل." قلت بلى يا رسول الله. قال فلا تفعل. Don't fast every day. Don't fast. Don't, pray throughout the night every night. Some who after do fast, but do break your fast, meaning this is other than Ramadan, of course. وقم ونم, and pray at night, but also get a share of sleep. For your body has a right. فإن لجسدك عليه حقا. And here we have the eye. وإن لعينك عليك حقا. وإن لزوجك عليك حقا. This hadith in this form is narrated by Bukhari and Muslim. In reading the hadith literature, one is struck by a consistently positive and healthy attitude to marriage and sexuality, while transgressions against public morality were dealt with severely. Sexual expression in private was generally encouraged rather than suppressed by the new religion, by Islam. The Prophet ﷺ said, and we'll conclude with this hadith inshallah, and we'll continue in the next session. The Prophet ﷺ said, "In the sexual act of each of you there is a charity." The companions replied, "O Messenger of God, when one of us fulfills his sexual desire, will he be rewarded by God for doing so?" This is the meaning. And he said, "Do you not think that were he to act upon it unlawfully, he would be sinning? Likewise, if he acts upon it lawfully, he will be rewarded." And I would like simply to highlight the Arabic part of the hadith, which is narrated by Muslim. In the sexual act of each of you there is charity. Really, وفي بضع أحدكم صدقة. وفي بضع أحدكم صدقة. This reflects that what Al-Hakim Murad was trying to say through this by including these traditions. In fact, it's much, much more than this, and I hope that we'll have a chance to cover both the what Timothy Winter, Al-Hakim Murad wants to say, and whether we could add some prophetic additions on sexuality in general. Sexuality is wholesome as long as it is halal within the parameters of the Sharia. Until the next session, inshallah. Subhanakallah wa bihamdik. Ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.